humble man helps a stranger, misses his interview, unaware. She's a millionaire NFL star and love is a miracle. A man helps a stranger, misses his interview, unaware she's a millionaire NFL star and changes his life. The cold drizzle soaked through Daniel Mitchell's thin jacket as he stood on the busy sidewalk of downtown Los Angeles, arm raised desperately. Black Ubers zoomed past, splashing water onto the pavement, but not one stopped for him. "Come on, please," he muttered under his breath, glancing at his watch. 8:27 a.m. He had less than half an hour to reach Torres Sports Management for what could be the most important interview of his life. A silver SUV slowed near the curb, and Daniel took a hopeful step forward, only to watch a businessman in an expensive suit slide in before he could reach it. He let out a frustrated sigh and checked his phone. No ride-sharing apps had cars available nearby, and taking the bus now would be cutting it too close. "Are you kidding me?" he groaned, his heart picking up as he calculated his rapidly shrinking window of time. Just as he was about to turn and sprint toward the nearest metro station, a disturbance on the sidewalk caught his eye. A woman in athletic wear staggered near a lamppost, one hand clutching her side. Her long blonde hair was damp from the rain, and though she exuded strength and athleticism, there was something undeniably fragile about the way she swayed. Then suddenly, she collapsed. Daniel's breath hitched. For a second, he hesitated. People walked past her without a second glance, too busy, too indifferent, or simply assuming someone else would step in. His fingers tightened around the strap of his bag. If he helped her, he would be late, possibly too late. This interview was his chance, a dream job, a career breakthrough. His pulse pounded in his ears as he took a single step toward the street. An Uber was approaching. Then he heard a weak, pained gasp from the woman on the ground. Daniel spun back. Without another thought, he rushed to her side, kneeling on the wet pavement. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her breathing was shallow, her forehead slick with sweat despite the cold. Up close, he could see her sharp features and the slight furrow in her brow, like someone unused to weakness. "Help," she murmured. "Help." Daniel grabbed her wrist, checking for a pulse, faint but present. "You're going to be okay," he said, more to reassure himself than her. He fumbled for his phone and quickly dialed 911. "I have a woman, early 30s, collapsed on Wilshire Boulevard near South Figueroa. She's conscious but weak, possibly cardiac-related. Please send an ambulance." "Help is on the way," the operator confirmed. Daniel exhaled in relief but realized that he couldn't leave now. Not yet. He shrugged off his jacket and carefully placed it under her head, shielding her from the cold pavement. She blinked up at him, dazed, her piercing blue-green eyes locking onto his for a moment. "Just leave me," she murmured, voice barely audible. Daniel scoffed. "Yeah, that's not happening." Footsteps rushed past, people barely sparing a glance. Daniel's mind raced. If he ran now, he might still make it in time. But he couldn't. Minutes stretched, the city buzzing around them like nothing was happening. Daniel held her wrist, feeling the weak but steady thump of her heartbeat beneath his fingers. Then, sirens. The ambulance pulled up, flashing red and blue against the gray sky. 2 paramedics jumped out, quickly assessing the situation. "She just collapsed," Daniel explained, standing back as they lifted her onto a stretcher. "I think it might be her heart." The older paramedic nodded. "Good thing you stayed with her." This could have been worse. Daniel felt a wave of relief, but it was short-lived. 8:56 a.m. His heart plummeted. He was supposed to be at the Torres Sports Management building 5 minutes ago. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. His interview was over, all because he had stopped for a stranger. Daniel sprinted up the steps of Torres Sports Management, his chest heaving as he pushed through the revolving glass doors. The sleek modern lobby stretched before him, polished marble floors, high ceilings, and a massive display of championship photos casting a powerful presence. The receptionist, a woman in a crisp navy blazer, barely glanced up as Daniel hurried forward, breathless. I'm here for the marketing coordinator interview," Daniel panted, gripping the counter as he tried to catch his breath. He was drenched from the rain, his hair sticking to his forehead, and his shoes squeaked embarrassingly against the marble. The receptionist finally looked up, raising a perfectly arched eyebrow. "Your name?" "Daniel Mitchell." There was a pause as the woman typed on her keyboard. Then she glanced back at Daniel with a detached expression. "I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell," she said smoothly. "The interviews ended 30 minutes ago." The receptionist gave a tight professional smile, the kind meant to dismiss, not sympathize. "I understand, but Ms. Chen, our hiring manager, was very clear about punctuality. The final candidates have already been selected." Daniel clenched his fists, frustration and desperation twisting inside him. "Please, just let me talk to her." "I promise I won't take much of her time." The receptionist hesitated, as if debating whether Daniel was worth the trouble. Then, with a sigh, she picked up the phone and dialed an extension. "Ms. Chen, I have a candidate here, Mr. Mitchell. He missed his time slot but is requesting a moment of your time." A brief silence, then a short, clipped reply on the other end. "Understood," the receptionist said, hanging up. She turned back to Daniel. "She'll see you, but only for a moment." Relief washed over Daniel as he followed the woman down a long hallway. He was led into a minimalist office where Lisa Chen, the head of marketing, sat behind a glass desk. She was in her early 40s, impeccably dressed with an air of efficiency and impatience. "Mr. Mitchell," she greeted, gesturing for him to sit. "You missed your interview." Daniel sat down, trying to steady himself. "Yes, ma'am. I had an emergency. Someone collapsed on the street and I stayed to help until the paramedics arrived. I understand if that cost me my opportunity, but I wanted you to know that I didn't take being late lightly." Chen studied him, fingers tapping lightly against her desk. "That's admirable," she admitted. "But let me ask you this. If you were already employed here and you had an urgent deadline but chose to help a stranger instead, what do you think would happen?" Daniel hesitated. "I would still do the right thing, but I would make sure to communicate with my team and find a solution." She nodded, but her expression remained unreadable. "This position requires extreme reliability. Our clients are high-profile athletes dealing with million-dollar endorsements daily. If a coordinator fails to show up on time, that could cost them opportunities." She exhaled. "Unfortunately, we need someone who can be trusted to be present, no matter the circumstances." Daniel felt a pang of humiliation settle deep in his chest. "So that's it?" he asked, voice quiet. "I lose my chance because I helped someone?" Chen's gaze softened slightly, but her tone remained firm. "We had hundreds of applicants. Everyone here had to make sacrifices to prove their dedication. You made a choice, Mr. Mitchell, and while it was the morally right one, it wasn't the right one for this company." Daniel swallowed hard, his heart sinking. "Thank you for your time," he murmured, rising from the chair. Chen simply nodded, already turning back to her computer. Daniel walked out of the office in a daze, each step feeling heavier than the last. He had been so sure, so hopeful that this was his moment, that after years of working dead-end jobs, after struggling through college while juggling 2 part-time gigs, he would finally have his shot at a career that meant something. But now he was back to square one. Stepping out onto the sidewalk, the rain had stopped, but the city still felt cold. Daniel pulled his jacket tighter around himself, staring up at the towering building he had dreamed of working in. For the first time since this morning, doubt crept into his mind. Had he made a mistake? His fingers hovered over his phone, tempted to check the job listings again. Then, his phone buzzed. An unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello? Is this Daniel Mitchell?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, this is." "Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. The woman you helped this morning has regained consciousness. She asked to see you." Daniel's breath caught. He looked back at Torres Sports Management, then at the bustling city ahead. The job was gone. But now there was another path opening before him, and he was suddenly very curious to find out where it led. The scent of antiseptic filled the air as Daniel stepped into Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, his footsteps echoing softly against the pristine tile floors. The place was busy, Nurses moving briskly, doctors conferring in hushed tones, but Daniel's focus was singular. He approached the front desk, clearing his throat. "Hi, I got a call about a patient who asked for me. She collapsed on Wilshire Boulevard this morning." The receptionist checked her notes. "That would be Miss Torres. Room 412, down the hall to your right." Daniel nodded his thanks and followed the corridor, his heart beating a little too fast. When he reached the door, he hesitated. What exactly was he walking into? A simple thank you? A woman curious about the stranger who had stayed by her side? Or something else entirely? He took a deep breath and knocked lightly before pushing the door open. Inside, the woman he had saved earlier, Rachel Torres, was sitting up in bed, her athletic jacket removed but her team warm-up pants still on. She looked composed despite the IV drip attached to her arm. Her long blonde hair was pulled back now, revealing sharp features and those striking blue-green eyes. She looked up when he entered, her gaze sharp and assessing. "You came," she said, her voice smoother than he expected, with a quiet authority beneath it. Daniel shrugged, stepping closer. "You asked for me." Rachel studied him, then gestured toward the chair by her bedside. "Please, sit." He did, feeling strangely out of place in the sterile hospital room. There was a brief silence before she spoke again. "I assume you missed your interview because of me." Her tone wasn't apologetic, just matter of fact. Daniel exhaled, leaning back. "Yeah, but I don't regret it." Her brows lifted slightly, as if his answer surprised her. "Why?" She tilted her head, considering her words. Then she said, with quiet certainty, "Because life is more important than a job. I can find another opportunity, but if you had died, there wouldn't be a second chance." Rachel didn't respond immediately. Instead, she simply watched him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Daniel wondered if he had said something wrong. Then she chuckled, a low, warm sound that caught him off guard. Her lips curved slightly as she leaned back against the pillows. "Not many people think that way," she murmured. Daniel frowned. "I find that hard to believe." Rachel's gaze darkened, as if she were remembering something distant. "Most people would have kept walking." "You didn't." She shifted in her chair, suddenly feeling self-conscious under his scrutiny. "I don't know. It wasn't really a choice. I saw someone in trouble, and I acted." Rachel tapped her fingers lightly against the blanket, seeming to consider his words. Then, abruptly, she changed the subject. "Have you eaten yet?" Daniel blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "I'd like to thank you properly." "Join me for dinner." He hesitated, glancing at the IV in her arm. "Are you even allowed to eat real food right now?" Her mouth twitched in amusement. "I'll be discharged in a few hours." Daniel bit his lip, uncertain. This woman, Rachel Torres, was clearly someone powerful. Even sitting in a hospital bed, there was an undeniable presence about her. And yet, he was curious. "All right," he said finally. "But only if you promise not to collapse on me again." Rachel smirked. "I'll do my best." And just like that, the course of Daniel's life shifted in a direction he never expected. The dim glow of chandeliers bathed the restaurant in golden light, reflecting off the polished marble floors and crisp white tablecloths. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his fingers lightly tracing the edge of the fine china plate in front of him. He had expected a casual dinner, maybe a small cafe near the hospital, a quiet place to talk. Instead, Rachel had brought him to one of the most exclusive restaurants in Los Angeles, the kind where the waiters wore tailored suits and spoke in hushed, reverent tones. He felt wildly out of place. Across the table, Rachel looked completely at ease. She had changed from her hospital attire into a fitted blazer and designer jeans, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves. She exuded a quiet confidence, like someone used to commanding rooms, making decisions that shaped careers. Daniel took a sip of his water, trying to ignore the glances from the elegantly dressed patrons around them. "So, do you bring all the people who save your life to places like this?" Rachel's lips quirked into a small smirk. "No, just you." She let out a breathy chuckle. "Well, I feel honored." Their waiter arrived with a bottle of wine, and Rachel ordered for both of them with an effortless grace that made Daniel acutely aware of the difference in their worlds. Once they were alone again, she leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Daniel, before today, what were you hoping for? What was that interview supposed to be the first step toward?" Daniel hesitated, then placed his hands on the table, choosing honesty. "I've always wanted to work in sports marketing," he admitted. "I put myself through college working 2 jobs, taking night classes. The plan was to start as a coordinator, prove myself, and work my way up." He let out a small laugh, shaking his head. "It's not glamorous, but I want to build something. Something stable, something I can be proud of." Rachel watched him carefully, her expression unreadable. "You put yourself through college?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, no trust fund, no connections, just me, some student loans, and a lot of determination." For a moment, Rachel didn't say anything. Then, with an air of casual revelation, she leaned back in her chair and said, "I see. Well, if things had gone differently this morning, you might have been working for me." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Rachel tilted her head slightly. "I mean, I own Torres Sports Management." Silence. Daniel froze, his mind struggling to process what she had just said. For a moment, he thought he had misheard her. But then the name clicked. Torres Sports Management, the company he had been desperate to work for, the interview he had missed, the woman he had saved, was the same woman who could have decided his career. His stomach dropped. "You," he started, but the words caught in his throat. "You're the owner." Rachel nodded, watching his reaction with quiet amusement. Daniel blinked, his heart racing. He had spent the entire day thinking he had lost his one shot at a future, only to find out that the very woman he had sacrificed his interview for was the one person who could have hired him outright. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling sharply. Wow, that's unexpected." Rachel studied him for a moment, then said, "You impressed me today, Daniel." He let out a short laugh, still in mild shock. "I impressed you?" "I thought you just said I was unreliable for missing an important meeting." Her expression softened slightly. "You weren't unreliable. You made a choice, a rare one." Daniel swallowed, his mind still reeling. Then Rachel leaned forward, her voice calm but undeniably firm. "I want to offer you a job." Daniel stared at her, his pulse hammering in his ears. "A job?" he repeated, almost not trusting what he had just heard. Rachel nodded. "A trial period. No interview, no standard process. Just you proving what you're capable of." Daniel's breath caught. This was everything he had worked for, a chance to step into the world he had fought so hard to enter. And yet, something inside him hesitated. He looked down at his hands, his mind torn. "That's incredibly generous," he said carefully. "But I don't want to be given a job just because I happen to be in the right place at the right time." Rachel didn't look surprised by his response. If anything, her smirk deepened, as if she had expected him to say that. "Then don't take it as a favor," she said simply. "Take it as a challenge. Prove that you belong there." Daniel bit his lip, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. This could change everything. But was he ready for it? Daniel stood in front of the Torres Sports Management building, staring up at the glass facade that reflected the morning sun. A week ago, he had walked away from this building in defeat, convinced that he had lost his only shot. Now he was stepping inside, not as a desperate job applicant, but as an intern with something to prove. He exhaled sharply and pushed through the doors. The lobby was a sea of power suits and confident strides, a world where no one hesitated, no one faltered. He refused to be the exception. At the receptionist desk, a woman with sharp cheekbones and a perfectly tailored dress glanced up. "Mr. Mitchell?" Daniel nodded. "Follow me. Ms. Torres is expecting you." Daniel squared his shoulders and walked with purpose, though his heart pounded. Rachel's office was sleek and modern, all glass, dark wood, and quiet authority. She stood near the window, looking out at the city skyline, hands in the pockets of her tailored blazer. "You're early," she noted, turning to face him. Daniel lifted his chin slightly. I figured I should set the right impression. A flicker of approval crossed her face before she gestured toward a chair. Sit. He did, gripping his notebook tightly, prepared for some kind of formal orientation speech. Instead, Rachel leaned against her desk and said, "Tell me what you want out of this." Daniel hesitated for only a second. "I want to prove I deserve to be here. I don't want to be given anything I haven't earned." Rachel studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Good. Because no one here is going to take it easy on you." That was exactly what he wanted to hear. She handed him a folder. "Your internship is temporary, 6 weeks. If you succeed, you stay. If you don't." She let the sentence hang in the air. Daniel took the folder, gripping it tightly. "I won't give you a reason to let me go." Her lips quirked slightly. "Let's see if you can back that up." From the moment Daniel stepped into his department, he could feel the weight of judgment. The other interns, most from prestigious universities with impeccable resumes and last names that opened doors, made it clear that they considered him an outsider. "He's the owner's special case," he overheard one of them whisper. "Think he actually got in on merit?" another muttered. Daniel refused to react. He had expected this. He welcomed it. If they wanted to doubt him, he'd make sure he outworked every single one of them. He stayed late, arrived early, took on extra assignments, and made no excuses. When an opportunity arose to present marketing projections for an upcoming campaign, he volunteered, even when he knew the others expected him to fail. He didn't. When he finished his presentation, the silence in the conference room was thick. Then Rachel, who had been sitting at the far end of the table listening intently, smirked slightly and nodded. "Solid work, Mitchell." It was the first acknowledgement he had received from her in weeks, and though it was brief, it sent a thrill through his chest. The others had no choice but to take him seriously after that. The more Daniel worked, the more he noticed something about Rachel, something beyond the cold, intimidating owner persona. She wasn't just demanding. She was deeply invested in her work. She noticed things others didn't. When an analyst miscalculated a report, she caught the mistake instantly. When Daniel hesitated on a strategy question, she didn't give him the answer. She made him figure it out himself. It was frustrating and exhilarating. The rare moments when their interactions turned personal caught Daniel off guard. One evening, after most of the office had cleared out, he walked past her open door. "You're still here?" she asked, glancing up from her laptop. He held up a stack of files. "Trying to prove I belong." Her expression softened, just slightly. "You already do." He knew she meant professionally, but it still made his heart race. It started as a low hum of awareness, something he ignored at first. Then it became harder. The way she looked at him during meetings, thoughtful, interested, a little amused. The way their casual interactions sometimes stretched longer than necessary. The way his pulse picked up every time he heard her voice. He didn't know if it was admiration or something deeper. But he knew it was dangerous. This was his boss. This was the woman who held his career in her hands. He couldn't afford distractions, and yet he couldn't stop thinking about her. Daniel shoved the feelings down and focused on the work. Because if he let himself fall, it would be a long way down. Daniel had always prided himself on being rational. He had spent years focusing on his career, pushing through obstacles, and never letting emotions cloud his judgment. But Rachel Torres was making that impossible. He wasn't sure when it started. Maybe it was the late nights, the quiet moments when the office emptied, leaving just the two of them working side by side in companionable silence. Maybe it was the way she challenged him, pushing him to think deeper, be better. Or maybe it was just her, the way her sharp blue-green eyes softened when he spoke, the rare but genuine smile when he surprised her with an idea she hadn't considered, the way she always seemed to notice him, even in a room full of people. Daniel tried to ignore it. He reminded himself, "She's your boss. This is dangerous. She would never see you that way." And yet, there was something there. He saw it in the way her gaze lingered just a second too long, the way her voice softened when she said his name, the way she seemed to fight something within herself whenever they were alone. He wasn't imagining it. But that didn't mean it could happen. So he buried it. He focused on work, on proving himself, on pretending he didn't feel like gravity shifted whenever she was near. The turning point came when a major endorsement deal collapsed unexpectedly. Daniel had been in the conference room when the news broke. One of their biggest clients was pulling out of a multi-million-dollar partnership, and the fallout would be catastrophic. Tension crackled in the air as the senior executives scrambled for solutions. Rachel sat at the head of the table, her expression unreadable, but Daniel could see the tightness in her jaw. She was already calculating the damage, looking for a way out. And then, before he could think twice, he spoke up. "What if we restructure the deal?" The room went silent. Daniel swallowed, feeling the weight of every stare. He wasn't supposed to be talking. He was an intern. Rachel's gaze snapped to his. "Explain." Daniel straightened in his chair. "The client is backing out because of the upfront risk, but if we adjust the terms, offer them a performance-based payout model instead of an initial investment, they might reconsider." The executives exchanged skeptical glances. "That would require us to take on a portion of the risk ourselves," one of them pointed out. "Yes," Daniel admitted, pulse racing. "But it also shows confidence in our own projections. And if it works, we don't just save the deal, we strengthen our relationship with the client." Silence. Then Rachel smirked. "That," she said, "is a damn good idea." She turned to her team. "Work on the numbers. If the projections hold, we pitch this by the end of the day." Daniel barely processed what had just happened. But later, when the deal was salvaged and everyone else had left for the night, Rachel found him in the hallway. "You impressed me today," she said quietly. Daniel looked up at her, heart pounding. "I just did what I thought was right." Rachel exhaled, studying him like she was seeing him in a new light. "I want you on my team permanently," she said. "Not as an intern, as my executive coordinator." Daniel froze. This was everything he had worked for, a real position, a place at the table. But it also meant staying close to her. And that was starting to feel more dangerous than anything else. He accepted the job. Of course he did. And things should have gone back to normal. But they didn't. Because now there were even more late nights, more quiet moments, more stolen glances across the office. Daniel caught Rachel watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. She brushed past him in the hallways, the briefest touch sending electricity through his skin. And every time, he thought, say something. Ask her. Figure out what this is. But he never did. Because what if he was wrong? What if this was just his imagination? What if she didn't feel the same way? But then one evening, when the office was nearly empty, Rachel stopped in his doorway. "You should go home," she said. Daniel glanced up from his desk, raising an eyebrow. "You should too." Her lips curved slightly, but she didn't move. Instead, she hesitated. And that was new. Rachel Torres never hesitated. "Daniel," she said, her voice quieter than usual. He straightened, his pulse suddenly thrumming in his ears. For a second, he swore he saw it. The flicker of something in her expression, the hesitation, the pull, the possibility. Say something, he thought. Ask her. But then her expression hardened, and just like that, the moment was gone. "See you tomorrow," she said. And then she walked away. Daniel sat there, staring after her, knowing, just knowing, that whatever was happening between them, she was fighting it just as much as he was. The tension between them had become impossible to ignore. Weeks passed, filled with the same lingering glances, the same unspoken words. But Rachel remained distant, keeping their relationship strictly professional. Until the night everything changed. It was late. The office was empty except for the two of them. Daniel was at his desk, typing away, when he heard the familiar sound of footsteps approaching. He looked up to find Rachel standing in the doorway, her blazer removed, her hair loose around her shoulders, a rare sight of vulnerability. "You should go home," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "So should you," he countered. A silence stretched between them, thick with something unspoken, undeniable. Then, finally, Rachel took a breath and stepped closer. "I can't keep pretending," she said, her voice low, intentional. Daniel's heart stilled. She looked at him, then really looked at him, and he saw the conflict, the hesitation, but also the certainty. "I tried," she admitted. "I tried to keep my distance. I told myself it was the right thing to do, but the truth is—" She exhaled, her gaze never leaving his. "I don't want distance, Daniel. Not with you." He felt his world tilt, his carefully built walls crumbling in an instant. "Rachel," he hesitated, every rational thought screaming at him to be cautious. But then he thought about all the moments leading up to this one. The late nights, the stolen glances, the unspoken understanding between them. And suddenly, caution didn't matter anymore. Because the truth was, he had been falling for her all along. A slow, relieved smile crossed Rachel's face, as if she had been waiting, hoping for him to say those words. She reached for him then, and he didn't pull away. Not this time. Navigating their relationship within the company wasn't easy, but they found a balance. Professional in the office, deeply connected outside of it. They didn't hide what they had, but they also didn't let it interfere with their work. And despite his initial fears, Daniel proved himself not as the man dating the owner, but as someone who had earned his place. Months passed, seasons changed, and then, 1 year later, everything came full circle. The rooftop restaurant was quiet, the Los Angeles skyline stretching endlessly beyond them. Candlelight flickered across their table, reflecting in Rachel's blue-green eyes as she watched him with something deeper than admiration, something certain, unshakable. Daniel laughed softly, shaking his head. "You're acting strange tonight," Rachel smirked. "Strange?" She gestured at the private table, the exquisite meal, the soft music playing in the background. "Even for you, this is a bit much." Rachel exhaled, suddenly looking almost nervous. Daniel's teasing smile faltered. "Rachel." She reached into her jacket pocket and before he could fully process what was happening, produced a velvet box. His breath caught. Slowly, she opened it, revealing a simple yet stunning ring. Daniel's hand flew to his mouth. "Marry me," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. He blinked, his heart pounding. "Daniel, I knew from the moment you stayed by my side that day," she continued, her expression soft yet certain. "You didn't know who I was, but you stayed. And every day since, you've proven the kind of person you are. Determined, brilliant, kind." She paused, her smirk returning. "And incredibly stubborn." Daniel let out a watery laugh, his chest tightening. "I don't want to spend another day pretending I don't need you," she admitted. "Because I do, Daniel. In every way." Tears pricked his eyes, his heart overflowing. There was only one answer. "Yes," he whispered, his voice trembling. Rachel let out a relieved chuckle, standing and pulling him into her arms before slipping the ring onto his finger. The city sparkled behind them, but nothing shone brighter than the future unfolding before them. A future built on kindness, perseverance, and love. A future they would face together. And so, what started as an act of kindness on a rainy morning became the beginning of a love story neither of them expected, but both desperately needed. Daniel and Rachel's journey was one of sacrifice, resilience, and taking chances. Not just on careers, but on each other. Because sometimes the things we fear losing the most lead us to exactly where we're meant to be. What we wanted to share with you today is that in any situation, kindness grows when planted in the right place. Now it's your turn. What moment touched your heart the most? Was it when Daniel said, "But life is more important than a job"? Or when Rachel whispered, "You stayed by my side without even knowing me"? Have you witnessed a similar story before? In real life, a situation where a stranger risked everything to save another stranger, share it with us so we can spread kindness together. Where are you watching from, and are you okay today? If not, leave us a message. Our team is always here to listen. Would you like more heartwarming stories and emotional narratives about sacrifice, love, and second chances? What encouraging stories would you like to hear? About people who just need someone to stand by their side? Or heroes who risk their careers to do the right thing? Thank you for spending time with us. If this story made you believe a little more in the power of kindness, leave a comment, Share the video with your loved ones and subscribe so you don't miss the next inspiring story. Every share you make can be a bridge that helps someone in despair find their way out. See you in the next video, where we'll continue to tell stories that warm our hearts and bring tears to our eyes.